Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us here today. We are sitting with Guy Malone, an editor for Bitcoin Magazine. Now, Guy and I had actually met online years ago from a post I made, but most recently we actually got to meet in person where we actually got to know each other at the Bitcoin Miami conference. And Guy, first off, how are you doing today?
Hey, great, man. Good to see you again virtually opposed to in person, Mike.
Yeah. Like you had said in person, when I'm allowed, I usually go out in a tracksuit, hair down, and all that. When I'm in the professional mode, it's like suit and all that, and use the background to hide my long unruly hair
Sure,
most of the
sure.
time.
I'm not actually flying over El Salvador or their volcano, by the way. That's not out
Oh,
my airplane window or anything like that.
damn, I don't know. You got me with that one, man. You got me with that one.
Good, good.
Anyway, so first off, you were working the conference a lot of time. You seemed very, very busy the entire time. So busy, by the way. I actually did the thing when I got my ticket. I was like, yeah, I'll do the shirt thing too, and I just never got around to picking it up. I was like, whatever, dude. I mean, there's so much free loot that was given out anyways, this place and that. I was like, it's fine. But anyway, so how was your experience at the conference?
You nailed it. Busy. I was behind that desk for quite a lot of the time, about 3.5 of the 4 days. I was behind the desk, moving t-shirts, magazines, other product. You saw they had like about 6 of us up there. And sometimes, you skipped the line, but there was a queue with a turnstile or ropes that almost went out. It was like bartending at a busy club, actually. I used to bartend in Daytona Beach, Florida during spring break, and that was sort of what it was like. I can help who's next, take who's next, ring you up, upsell maybe, and then boom, on to the next one.
So you mentioned Daytona Beach, which is the only other place in Florida I've actually been on top of that. And so like aside from the conference, did you enjoy Miami? I did not, just to be completely honest. I did not enjoy Miami, or the traffic wasn't really my vibe. But how did you like it?
I did get to enjoy some Miami, and what I saw, I enjoyed. I can see like it's got probably that ugly big city side to where it's all nightlife and no fun at all. But just because I knew I'd be working a lot, one, I gave myself 3 extra days at an Airbnb,
Hmm.
other than what the magazine paid for our hotel, and I was walking distance to the beach. I was technically on the island. I guess that's South Miami Beach. I'm not
Mhm.
quite sure of the north, south, Miami. It's not,
It's a big city.
yeah. Yeah, it's not designed to make a whole lot of sense either. I don't think. But yeah, I had a great Airbnb where I just walked to the beach, had restaurants and stores in walking distance. So I chilled for like another additional 2.5 days after it was all over. And I went out at least one of the nights I went to Compass Mining, had a really nice hosted happy hour and food bar. That was a great 3 hours. Hung
Okay.
out with a couple people I met there. One's a Lightning developer, and then also a couple known as the Crypto Couple. They met me there, and we had fun with that one. Free drinks and great food, courtesy Compass Mining.
Nice. Well, that's good. I mean, for the most part, I was conferencing and quite busy, but like, yeah, it was what I wound up in is the nightlife trap, and that was not very appealing to me at all. The beaches are really like the sand is kind of like really white though, and I thought that was interesting. Really pretty place as location wise. So I guess kind of back to the conference. Yeah, you just described two people that you met through there. I thought that was the coolest thing was everybody kind of wanted to meet everybody. You had some pretty cool speakers. Did you get to catch any of it?
Very little. No, actually, I would say no. I mean, I've been watching it online after the fact.
Mhm.
I met lots of speakers and lots of people either in line or incidentally. Like that, many of the speakers came up to get their free shirt, which
Yeah.
you 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 elected not to. But I
Yeah.
had the extra special feature factor bonus or whatever of when they'd come up to me, hi, my name's Margot, da 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 da. I'm supposed to pick up my friend. I'm like, oh, you're a speaker. And I was like, yes. And I had the bonus of handing them their t-shirt and assuring them that their name was spelled correctly. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, that was one of my pre-conference jobs is I had to proofread all the names on the back of the t-shirts. And then there was a longer poster, which had a couple hundred extra names on it.
Mhm.
So I kind of sent the graphic to a couple of my friends here in town, and I'm like, hey, I presented it as it was presented to me. I was like, hey, could you look over this and real quick? and tell me if all the names are spelled correctly. And you look at it, there's like a couple hundred names, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller the further you go down the shirt or the graphic. And, and they're like, "No, are you kidding me?" Honestly, it took me 5 hours to
Wow.
do it, Googling everybody and making sure that their titles were correctly, that their name wasn't hyphenated or misspelled. And when I got back with my friends, who I shouldn't tell this on on whoever created the first graphic, I
Uh-huh.
was able to tell them, actually, there are 5 misspelled names on the
Hmm.
graphic that I sent you. And but there's going to be like 13,000 t-shirts printed. Guess whose ass it is if it turns out there's actually 6 or 7 misspelled names on there that I didn't catch.
Well, you
So
are the editor for Bitcoin Magazine, so I'm
I'm an editor. I'm
Mm.
a freelance 1099 remote proofreader copy editor. They have got a huge staff at Bitcoin Magazine.
Really.
I'm in a freelance pool of articles that get dropped daily, and just whoever says me first or whoever grabs it gets it. But it's a 1099 freelance position to where, yes, I have articles coming, I'd say across my desk, but across my computer. I edit about 1 to 5 articles per day on average. Slow day, busy day, or if I've got something else to do and I'm not home, it could be 0. But it's completely freelance, copyright, editing, AP style, fact checking, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, and I want to dive into your role there a little bit more, but before we do that, I want to go back to how I was like, how did I get Guy on LinkedIn in the first place? And I scrolled up and I had seen it was that message that I posted. I think it was in the cryptocurrency investing group on Facebook. Is that how you add me on LinkedIn from that? I'm trying to remember how that
I
happened.
may have, just as far as networking or future employment goes, because I'm freelance, so I can work, for 10 different people if I have
Mm.
all the time, is that I might just, if you're in the industry, I would probably either grab you or add you on Twitter and or LinkedIn, just to expanding the network. I talked to someone last night who I maintain a site or a Twitter page
Mhm.
for someone else, and she was like waving and saying hi on it. But I knew I had her in my regular personal Twitter feed as a crypto contact,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Hey, is this really you?" Or something like that. She goes, "Oh yes, I must have been spamming over there to build up my network a little bit." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I already spammed you on LinkedIn earlier today too." So
Yeah, yeah,
but
fair
yeah,
enough.
that must have been it. You either made a headline or you were doing something just really great in the industry.
Well,
And I'm like,
I
"Oh,
got the
cool.
letter here. It was
Add to
funny.
contacts."
I at the bottom I did put my LinkedIn, but this was back in 2019 when Trump had said like crypto for criminals and all that other shit. And I was like, oh, this is a good time to just send a message, right? And I was like, okay. And I had sent this thing saying, consider the following and this and that, and public ledger, it can't be counterfeited, and you guys can't endlessly print it or whatever. But I had posted that, and like I told you in a message, he did not respond back. Kind of
Right.
hit me right in the heart, but he did not actually respond back to me at all. I figured, a schmooze up the paramedic card, whatever. There might be a chance. Nope, nothing. Got nothing, nothing back from him.
I trolled him on Twitter a couple times. I think seeing the way Pompliano does it sort of gave me a little boldness. So there were a
Yeah.
couple times where once he said something about the Dow is great. We have these numbers, this, that, the other thing. This was 2019 as well,
Mhm.
I'm going to guess. And I was like, "Hey, great numbers, President. Bitcoin's numbers are great, much bigger." And I'd send the Forbes article, just broke $6,000.
Yeah.
Are you buying any, Mr. Trump, President Trump, or advising Americans to use this as their savings account? So I tried a few different things like that as well, just to sort of troll or to respond to policy or to
Yeah.
promote Bitcoin in his Twitter feed. He was one of the ones. He never caved though, did he?
No, he didn't. No, at least not yet. I mean, give him time. He's still out and about doing stuff. So I'm sure he might eventually come around, is my guess on it. But here, I want to turn it back to you now in the Bitcoin magazine as the editor. And I thought this was one of the things when I looked at your LinkedIn and I saw your photo there with the red eyes, and then it's saying, I will correct your grammar and you'll like it. And then like the expert explainer of Bitcoin to normies, I can orange pill your wife for you. I was like, all right, yeah, I gotta meet up with a guy at the convention.
Thanks to yeah, that is based on a true story. I've had at least two instances of personal friends here that I'd go over to their house, and especially with the computer or internet, by the time I left, their wife is the one saying, "We need to buy Bitcoin," and
Yeah.
they're like, "That's what I've been telling you," but now they believed it after spending an hour or so with me, just running them through facts, data. I've found that most people tend to have, or we'll say no coiners, pre-coiners,
Mhm.
they've heard of it, they're aware, they're interested, but they just get to the point where they don't know who to trust for credible versus a scam. So if you have a personal connection and a little bit of knowledge, then that's often all it needs to push someone over the edge to, okay, I'm in, I'm
Yeah.
buying now.
Yeah, well, you bring up a really good point there. It's not like the worrying of a scam is unwarranted either. I mean, I would say things are getting better, but I mean, by all means, there's still a lot of scammers out there, still pump and dumps out there, and so on. So, like, I think one of the first things you got to do is separate blockchain technology and Bitcoin from all the other projects, right? And you kind of have to go back to basics and be like, okay, this is what blockchain technology is. This is who Satoshi Nakamoto was. Supposedly, obviously we don't know who he is, but you got to explain those things to them and be like, Bitcoin, if I don't recommend people buy anything, in general, right? You do it, you want with your money. Here's what I do though, and I explain that. And Bitcoin is one where it's like, okay, I mean, if you're willing to dollar cost average into something, you're not going to go wrong with your goal of getting one Bitcoin. Like, there's only so many that are going to be made. Say Bitcoin relatively safe for a risky asset, regardless, but the rest of it is incredibly risky.
I agree. There's a good tweet, I guess. It says that 5 years ago, we were speculating with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, we were investing in Bitcoin. Now we're saving in Bitcoin, and that's a huge mental swing. Actually,
Yeah.
is that the riskiness factor of it is just, I won't say it's 100% gone, but there's just nobody anymore in the industry, I think, that believes Bitcoin's going to go to zero, because the bottom is just that there's so many people now. I believe it's like 64%, close to 2/3 of all Bitcoin that's being held in addresses hasn't moved in over a year, because
Yeah.
people are determined to just hold it. So many people now are just waiting for that 100,000, that 250, that $1 million Bitcoin, that it's not considered a risky asset in the sense of,
Yeah.
losing everything. It's going to be volatile along the way, and you have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get into it with an outlook of, yeah, I'm going to hold on to this for a few years, you probably know the statistic. Nobody is under or nobody's down if they've held for 4 years or more.
Yeah, yeah, that's honestly what I tell people too, is like, hey, it may go up or down, but like I would be flabbergasted if it was down from where it is today in 4 or 5 years. It's like, just now's a good time to start getting into it slowly. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of ups or downs. And that was one of the things at the convention Jordan Peterson had actually brought up, was that the good thing about those ups or downs is they're very natural, as opposed to the real currency. I guess fiat currency is not very real either right now, but the physical currency we kind of work with in our daily lives is one super centralized, to where like they can print as much as they want whenever they want. They can do things to keep the value of that currency inflated, and they can control the markets that work off of those currencies too. Well, the downside to that is you can only play with the system for so long before it's all going to have a massive collapse on you. While Bitcoin and unregulated crypto markets as a whole kind of adjust themselves accordingly. It's like, okay, well, less people want me, price goes down. Easy peasy. It kind of is what it is. It's not really a big deal. It doesn't feel good when it happens, sure, but it's better than the alternative of trying to use regulation to hold it in place at a certain price.
Yeah, that's very unnatural and fake, propping up the value or propping up. It's like all the dollars that we're pouring into stocks or companies now to keep their stocks viable, to keep their prices up. They're getting a lot of that helicopter money, and then the bond market itself is just. Don't pretend to be an expert, honestly, in stocks and bonds,
Yeah, fair.
but as far as owning a little bit of a diversified asset, a little bit, yeah, more than a little Bitcoin in your portfolio is a smart move now, because the whole supply demand factor, it is strictly almost entirely supply and demand. I like the statistic or the fact that Bitcoin is the one first true asset in the world to where the supply does not increase in keeping with demand. No matter how many more people wake up tomorrow and decide they want to own Bitcoin, they're not going to make any more to meet that demand. You know, with
Yeah.
oil or with gold, you can just dig deeper, work harder, mine harder, hop on an asteroid or the ocean
Yeah.
floor, and you'll get more gold eventually, or you'll
Yeah.
discover more oil. Those are both unknowns as far as how much actually exists, but the
Yeah.
supply can be increased anytime the price really goes up and there's demand. Those companies will find a way to meet the demand just by increasing the supply. Not so with Bitcoin.
No, no, there's not. It's 21 million, and that's it. There will never be more than that. That's why just the idea of like, I'm again, I don't recommend people do any specific thing, but just getting one Bitcoin. There's only 21 million, man. There's billions and billions of people. So just aiming to get one is, like you said, it has less to do with speculation and more to do with just like a little safety, right? Just tucking it away for a rainy day, because as we've seen, I mean, like one of the reasons why Bitcoin was touted was because it's anti-inflationary, while all currencies are inflationary. And now we're seeing them all inflating, even in the more developed countries now. USA and Canada and so on, where we're seeing our currency start to boop, 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 climbing up there in the inflation numbers. So it's kind of like the prophecies kind of being fulfilled, so to speak.
Yeah, you mean like when Satoshi said it is a self-fulfilling prophecy? You might want to get some just in case it catches on, because
Yeah.
as it catches, yeah, yeah, it's really just a matter of understanding. Someone says that your conviction about Bitcoin is directly related to your understanding of it, and I think many of us, once you go down the rabbit hole, like in my case, I was getting into it right around the time of the split, the
Mhm.
fork that created Bitcoin Cash, where they
Yeah.
were talking about the block size wars and all of
Yeah.
that. And I was struggling to wrap my head around it. It's like, well, is this really a good investment? Um, should I get more? Is it going to disappear? As a result of these blockchain, everybody was like, get your money off of Coinbase or get your Bitcoin off the exchanges.
Mhm.
So I had to do a kind of a little bit of a deep dive to decide if I even wanted the expense of a hardware wallet. I had
Yeah.
over $1,000 in Bitcoin at the time. So how do you protect it? This, that, the other thing. And the more you study and find out how anti-fragile, how incorruptible, unseizable it is, moving across borders with
Mhm.
all of your wealth as a password in your head, opposed to carrying cash or gold or something like that.
Yeah.
You just more and more you start to realize, oh, yeah, everybody's going to want some of this eventually.
Yeah.
So the demand is a constantly increasing effect. Everybody, once they understand it, they want it. And once that's the light bulb moment, like I say, I have with people, with friends and their wives, just give them enough facts. But then once you're in, the more you understand it, the greater your conviction grows that this is an asset that's here to stay. It's only going up in value. It's going to continue to go up in value. A little bit of volatility, a little stair step up and down. But yeah, once you understand it, you realize everybody's going to want some. And then the better you understand it, the more you realize you need to get some more. You feel safer and safer about it as an investment, to where people start with, oh, get one or just get off zero, get 1 or 2% of your net worth into Bitcoin. When
Yeah.
we know, you and I, we know full well there's people with 75, then 95, 100% of their net worth
Yeah.
in Bitcoin now,
It's
and
true.
they're not nervous about it at all.
Yeah, no, they're not. And matter of fact, what's interesting is in their brains, they've swapped it to where Satoshis are just how they judge the value of things. So then they're not even worried about the ups or down versus other currencies. They're doing all their math in Satoshis, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. So I guess what's interesting is as this develops, I don't think, for instance, we'll go to like a one currency world with just Bitcoin. I think it's not quite like it can't be, it wouldn't be used as a day-to-day currency as the only thing that it would ever exist, if that makes sense. I feel like there's room for lots of things at play here. And it's just that Bitcoin's definitely going to be a part of the story in my mind. But like from your perspective, do you see any issues if we swapped over to cryptocurrency? Obviously, like it's such a gigantic change. There'd have to be some. Is there any that you could see in your mind?
I agree with you that I'm a proponent of hyper Bitcoinization. That moment in time where we've crossed the threshold, crossed the Rubicon or whatever, to
Mhm.
where pretty much everything is priced in Satoshis or it's priced in Bitcoin. But that would be the level one, so to speak, the gold value of it.
Mhm.
But depending on where you lived, you probably wouldn't be spending Bitcoin on chain just because it's a little expensive to move around. You would have a fiat equivalent or even a layer two, layer three equivalent that
Yeah.
we use in our daily life. And so, yes, and I do agree, there is room to keep the dollar around, even though its value is plummeting compared to Bitcoin. It's more likely that Bitcoin will eventually become a peg
Yeah.
for other currencies for that they will be like Bitcoin will be the asset that the governments and the banks and wealthier individuals are holding on to long term. But then your dollars, or just say your layer, your Lightning, your layer two Bitcoin, or other layers would still reference or be pegged to Bitcoin. That's possible if hyper Bitcoinization is the end result. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that other currencies have a place as well, and they may be more functional, even more easier to use than even the than the base layer of Bitcoin would be.
Yeah. And I guess another thing was that we had discussed the self-fulfilling prophecies earlier. It is, I've never met a group of people like, for instance, that was in what was at the convention, right?
Oh, God, the energy.
Yeah, everyone was, we're all on the same page. I would sit down at the in the cafeteria up there, right? I'd sit down at the cafeteria and enter a 30-minute long conversation with the person sitting beside me. And like what was interesting is it wouldn't even just strictly touch crypto, but the level of conversation was again, yeah, so high energy and up there to where like you're gonna glean insight from anybody you talk to there. It was crazy. It's like there's not a dead head in there. Everyone in there has
Yeah,
something decent to say.
I love being able to tell my friends that. Yeah, I look forward to being the dumbest person in the room for a change, at least on this topic. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
fair enough. Yeah.
just like Twitter or just like when you're in person at the conferences. It's better to shut up and listen and use the opportunity to learn from the people around you, because one thing about this year's conference is that most everybody's on the same page, that we're almost to the point of saying, you know what, Bitcoin has won. We're not selling, we're not convincing, we're not cajoling people so much anymore. We are beginning to enjoy the very first phases of Bitcoin is established in the economy and in the world now, and in the vernacular, in the even in our vocabulary. It's not taken over, but now we're in a case of, okay, let's start building the Bitcoin centered world. Now seems to be the vibe or the mindset at the conference.
Yeah.
It's not about convincing others, it's not about convincing each other or patting each other on the back or cheerleading, hey, we're all in, there is no, hey, we're all in this together. In a disaster mode, we're
Mhm.
all in a, this is working, the Lindy effect, people say all the time. Just the longer something's around, the more secure, or the more faith we put in it being there much longer than past tomorrow. So yeah, the Lindy effect has had full impact on the Bitcoin world. And now we're just, all of us, we're acting as if we're just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up to what we know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The tide is turned to quite a degree. And at this point, it's like, all right, well, there's already cities and now countries we can just go to and do this anyway. So are you guys coming on board or not? Ooh, not looking good to hold your value in US dollars right now. Not looking good at all. I'm sorry for you for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Michael Saylor, he pegged it ages ago when they bought their $250 million, and then they bought the next one after that. Simply that your US dollar, your money is sitting in a melting ice cube right now. That's all it is. If you've got $100,000 or if you've got 10,000 in the bank, give it 5 or 10 years, you're going to be looking at 50% of the purchasing power.
Yeah. Yeah, and that hurts. That hurts really bad as opposed to Bitcoin. What's it did in the past couple of years? I mean, yeah, sure, there's been some massive ups and downs, but like US currency is only going to go down. Like there's going to be no humongous corrections to fix this course that we're on that wouldn't just destroy everything if we tried. So like it's going to be a rough ride otherwise. So yeah, I agree. And like the community I feel like is such a strong point that like you said, there's not a lot of convincing needed anymore. It's just here's what we're doing now.
Yeah, in fact, you may know this just from following me, but I was you would say a third party mayoral candidate here. I live in Roswell, New Mexico, by the way. Woot woot. But we recently had our mayoral election. There was a 2-term incumbent against a former state senator, and then I was the third pleb in the in the race as well. And there was a fourth as well. I came in third, but I did use some Bitcoin for the economy, reaching out to other industry. You know, we're 4 hours from the place in Texas that's building the world's largest Bitcoin mining facility right now. They're taking advantage of the solar and the wind that's available in that region, which we have here as well. So part of my platform was just involved, bringing in bigger businesses. But locally, I just became a little bit known as someone who knows enough about Bitcoin to use it in a sentence and actually be willing to talk about public policy on it. But the aftermath of that, of not winning the election, was that I've had 4 now speaking invitations at small, like the Elks Club or the Sertoma Club here locally meets at the Elks Club. So I did one of their lunches there, sort of a lunch and learn situation. Okay. And then a trade workers union brought me in. Same thing. I got up with no notes, no PowerPoints, barely 20 people in the room, and just started talking until time ran out, and then let people ask questions. And then also a high school here. It was that they said gifted program. It was their AP class, kind of at the end of the day, where we were free to roll with questions and answers after the fact. But as far as talking about Bitcoin has arrived, that as just someone who knows about it could wind up getting a lot of invitations to start talking to small groups about it. And I was totally glad to do it. I don't charge a fee or anything. But the point of the level of questions has actually come up. Now people are throwing every other, what about Doge at you? You run into that. You can't have the Bitcoin conversation without being asked about all these other ones too.
Well, we could blame Elon Musk for Doge. That was largely his doing. But yeah, I mean, like that's another thing, is like the industry is just kind of fun too. There's a lot of fun to be had. I mean, like there's serious sides of it, and there are serious conversations that need to happen. But a lot of the people are also willing to have fun. And like it is interesting that like there will be politicians that stick to like largely a crypto platform, and it'll help people get elected, man. It will.
Yeah, it's really becoming a thing. Not only will being pro Bitcoin or even pro crypto help people get elected, I've read in the last day or two about there's concentrated efforts now to vote out the people that are anti-crypto or anti-progress, anti-regulation, or those that are trying to make it harder and that are trying to increase the friction and the burden of developers, wallets, manufacturers, miners, treating all of them as if they are financial instruments and financial institutions. But it's so the movement is, whether or not there is a pro Bitcoin or pro crypto candidate, if someone like we could pick Brad Sherman, even though it's not the case because he does have Erica Rhodes running against him. She's getting all kinds of support. A 20 or 30 something year old teacher who with no political experience is about to knock out a multiple term sitting person, because the people that are pro crypto will purposely vote against you, even if there's not a pro crypto candidate against you. If you have identified yourself as being harmful to the industry or to the personal freedoms, the privacy rights,
Yeah.
the monetary sovereignty. If you are an enemy of that, you're gonna get voted out of office because there's just more of us than you realize. The
Yeah. Agreed.
I will remember her name, and Amanda Cavallari.
Mhm.
She's done some good work, and she has pointed out that the Bitcoin block is a larger voting block than AARP now.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, it's getting up there, and it's what's interesting is you see opposition on both sides, at least of the U.S. Conservative, liberal parties. You see them on both sides. People oppose it or support it. So it's interesting. It does seem like the out of the people, like for instance, at the convention, Joe Jorgensen, the Libertarian candidate, was there, and you could definitely say that it aligns with a lot of the views of that party. But that party is still very small, but overall, I do think, yeah, you're going to start having some weight to it. And it's interesting that it's not even just candidates that are pro Bitcoin, like let's throw our support there, but it's like if you're anti Bitcoin and like there are like I understand some of the arguments against it, right? Like one, I guess a conservative argument is we need to make the dollar as strong as possible. We need to stay nationalized, cohesive together. It's like, okay, I understand. I still disagree, but I understand your argument. Or people on the left look at the environmental impact of mining and so on. And they're like, well, we don't like the energy usage of this. And it's like, okay, well, what about the military industrial complex that is propping up our dollar? I bet that takes a
Yeah,
lot of energy, doesn't it?
takes a ton of
Thanks.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in people's mind, that's the way it's always been. That's the way the world works. It hasn't always been that way the last century, but in your lifetime, in my lifetime, I'm in my 50s and people older than me. So they're just sticking to the status quo in
Yeah.
that energy. But it seems like what are they called? It's like FUD dice now. The fear under something in doubt that
Mhm.
FUD. It's almost like there's a dice now that they just roll. Okay, uses too much energy. Okay, volatile. It's like the news media just keeps
Yeah.
for years now. It's like a cycle. As soon as you mention there's the energy factor, that gets
Yeah.
played so much that Bitcoin is bad for ESG purposes.
Mhm.
And yes, it's true. It's a fact. Bitcoin does use a lot of energy to secure the network, which we get. It's hard to convince someone on the other side of this argument of the value of having a secure monetary network that's transparent and audible, but is also unconfiscatable and secure. The value on that, it's hard to sell people on. So I use simpler analogies that while it is true that the Bitcoin network does consume more electricity than Sweden does, but you know what consumes more value, more energy than the Bitcoin network? Christmas lights.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
Just Christmas lights in America and worldwide, more electricity powers Christmas lights. And it brings you into this all of a sudden, who's to say what's a waste of energy and what's a good use of energy? What also uses more electricity than Bitcoin mining and the Bitcoin network? Clothes dryers. When we wash and dry our clothes. Clothes dryer. If you cared about the environment, you could easily eliminate the use of clothes dryers from American life or around the world and say, look outside. You've got all the solar and wind power you need
That's
in your
true.
own backyard to get your clothes dry. You
We
don't
like the
need
convenience of
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is it's a major convenience and time saver. But and again, gold mining, just the act of getting the gold out of the ground and converting it into something useful, that industry takes up more energy than Bitcoin as well. So even though they know, the people in the media, the people that are all ESG or that are anti-Bitcoin in general, I honestly think that that's just the excuse of the day, the excuse du jour for they're protecting the financial interests of the bankers and the Fed, the Rothschilds, et cetera. That
Yeah.
Bitcoin is a
Naturally.
huge threat, and then your J.P. Morgan and your Wells Fargo as well. These we use the term rent-seeking organizations that are third-party middlemen that extract 2, 3, 4, 5%, but without actually adding any value to the equation. Bitcoin being peer-to-peer. If I want to hand you a $5 bill and we're in person, Bitcoin works just like cash
Yeah.
without having to have that credit card 3% in the middle. So those industries that are being threatened, they're the ones that keep rolling out the the reasons why Bitcoin is bad for the environment or bad for the economy. Certainly you're aware of bitcoinobituaries.com. Over 300 times the mainstream media has declared Bitcoin
Bitcoin dead.
dead for
Yeah.
one reason or other, just to keep small guys like you and I from getting it at a low price while the industry is tooling over to grab it all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a kind of a tale as old as time. The people in power want to stay in power, and they're willing to do whatever they can to stay. But yeah, it is. I do think that it is going to be a brighter future with Bitcoin.
True, yeah. Another thing I'm noticing about the Bitcoin world is it does change our time preference. So this has just been on my mind a lot lately,
Mhm.
is that we sort of have a ray of hope that didn't used to be there as far as the ability, inflation and finances and housing prices are through the roof. Bitcoin, when you're sitting on it for a while and you realize with the passage of time, I'm getting wealthier and wealthier. It's a slow game, but when you start thinking about what's it going to take to get me to spend my Bitcoin, versus, cashing it in for dollars is one thing, but, everybody's kind of all now about this circular economy, about not necessarily cashing in your Bitcoin, just finding, AT&T or Dallas Ford, places that accept Bitcoin for payment. It brings up the question, yeah, but what's it going to get me to part with my Bitcoin? You're going to We live in a society now where everything is built to be disposable and replaced in a few years. Throw it away, whether that's your car or your computer or even your razor blade. You go from a disposable razor, we go from razors that fathers used to pass on to their sons. You
Yeah.
buy it once in your life and you keep it sharp, and the disposable economy has just sort of settled in. We buy cheap goods that are disposable because we know we're going to throw them away. But Bitcoiners are starting to look more long term, to where we're going to start building houses and museums and cars and furniture that are super high quality, that are built to last.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, there's a little bit of hope that maybe the world's not 100% going to hell in a handbasket. The way
We hope
we
so.
honestly otherwise feel it is. Bitcoin
Yeah.
has turned around to where a lot of people have hope that this world just might last, and humanity in this world might last a little longer than the projections, that we've thought about. All the apocalyptic movies we see growing up, that Bitcoin gives a fighting chance. So people are starting to grow beef, to build things that last. And yeah, I will give you 0.000001 of a Bitcoin to buy that, but it's because I believe it's high quality and it's going to last several years. And
Yeah. Agreed. Like it.
I'll give you
Yeah.
my dollars for almost no reason. I might throw a dollar at you if I'm pissed.
Yeah.
You
You go to
know,
Miami. You go into certain clubs. There's dollars all over the floor. There's no Bitcoin
yeah,
anywhere. It's not
no,
laying around. But
no,
yeah,
unless
good.
I was gonna say that old joke about unless you see a dancer with a QR code tattoo on her, she's collecting
Someday that'll
Bitcoin.
be a thing. And honestly, I'm sure they'd be making a
Oh,
lot of
it totally is a thing. It's a funny nerd meme or a nerd joke that uh, we'll just be polite and use the word dancers or exotic
money.
dancers in Vegas. We're having Bitcoin QR codes tattooed on their body parts, and Andreas Antonopoulos made the best nerd comment on it, because when one person thinks of dancers, your mind goes one place, but when a nerd like a Bitcoiner or Andreas, well, I hope that's a temporary tattoo, because reuse of the same address is horrible security. And we're
Yeah.
about to have a Bitcoin improvement protocol upgrade anyway that will render that one old. That's nerd thinking for you.
Yeah.
But
Good
oh
point.
yeah, that's happening too. There are people with QR code tattoos dancing, and they're collecting. But as far as just throwing money on the floor, people will do that with dollars, but we're not so fast to do this with
Well,
our
with Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
No, yeah. Well,
Like
what's interesting is there's somewhat of an argument that it might discourage spending too much, which I thought was interesting.
it is.
But yeah, I've only ever given any Bitcoin away for one reason, and it was to buy weights off somebody who just needed the money. And I think at the time the weights were I gave him like $1,200 worth, but now I think that's like 4 or 5 grand worth. So it still hurts me because I wouldn't have gotten rid of it otherwise. and at least I traded it for iron. Iron's a commodity, so
There you go.
you know.
Something that's you're going to have 5 or 10 or
Oh
20
yeah,
years from now.
it'll last. It ain't falling apart. And I mean, I would use it to buy gold or land. Those sound like good purchases with Bitcoin. But yeah, for the most part, I'm not throwing it around. I'd say I'm not using it for my daily expenses. I want to keep it.
Yeah, I'm still saving it myself. And I had a target price just based on a YouTuber who was around for the 2017, 18. And he said he never cashed anything in.
Mhm.
So now you set your target prices or a ladder, so to speak, that at this price, I'm finally going to sell a little bit and reap the rewards of my saving and my scrimping.
Mhm.
And my first step on that ladder was $100,000. And now I'm realizing, nope, too soon. Looks like it's happened a little quicker, last couple of years. I don't know if we'll be at 100,000 this year, not till next, but all of a sudden, no, I still got a few good working years in me. I'm still stacking at $100,000 Bitcoin.
Cool.
I will still be buying weekly, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, good point. I mean, like now 100K doesn't seem like a ceiling at all. Seems like something that we're just going to kind of plow through. 1 million seems like it's actually on the table again. 1
Oh,
million seems on
absolutely.
the table. And
Yeah,
like
I've never
maybe
doubted it.
even 10 years, maybe even 10 years, but yeah, it feels inevitable. 21 million Bitcoin that'll ever be made.
Yeah, I think Kathy Woods of ARK Investment, she reiterated at this year's Bitcoin conference the 100 or the million call for the year 2030,
Mhm.
which many other people are going to say that's way too long. That's going to happen a lot sooner. The When I talk to you, like I will orange pill like your wife for you. One of my favorite things to do is I'll have someone. Don't take my word for it. Just go on your phone and type or your computer Bitcoin $1 million, and even in this day and age, you got to tell them how many zeros that is. It's 6. Okay. And then just convince yourself. You start scrolling down, you see all these sources of CNN and Yahoo and Financial Times and Investopedia. And it's very easy to see for the common no coiner with no education whatsoever to see the credible results, Fidelity Digital Investments, on and on, or assets,
Yeah.
on and on, that will call that, yeah, there will be $1 million Bitcoin, and it's less than a decade away, way less, I think.
Well, I
But
think
then the
yeah.
one thing I do on top of that, if once they're finally in their own hand and have convinced themselves that, yeah, it looks like Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million one day, then I'll tell them, now add a zero and make your search result Bitcoin $10 million. And they get the exact same thing. Credible news financial sources that they're seeing are calling for a $10 million
Well,
Bitcoin within 20 years or so. I think
you know,
18 years.
the thing is though, what's interesting to think about is what will $10 million be worth in
Yeah.
that time period. So that's kind of the other thing. It's
Yeah.
not just Bitcoin's demand going up while the supply stays the same, because that is happening and that's somewhat gradual. It kind of happens in giant clumps sometimes. People jump on board. Robinhood made it easier, PayPal made it easier. Coinbase, I mean, was one of the first ones to make it decently easy enough as it was. But basically, it's getting easier and easier and easier to get it now. Cash App, you can do it too.
Right.
But like on top of that, it's also everything else going the opposite direction. So that's kind of where that's the great accelerator. So how bad can we muck everything else up to where Bitcoin's price has no choice but to just get flung upwards?
Yeah, if a cup of coffee is $250, $1 million Bitcoin is not going to surprise me or you or anybody. But actually, I think a lot of these quotes are in today's purchasing power. One of the big calls, if you look on YouTube for $10 million Bitcoin endgame, must stop Maravador or whatever his name is. He's got a good quote on there to where he clarifies he's calling for a $10 million Bitcoin in today's purchasing power. And that was recorded with Pompliano before the lockdowns, before COVID really was a big hit. So the call for a $10 million Bitcoin, even then it was called Endgame, but they were very specific to say in today's purchasing power. And that's after a lot. And Bitcoin, the dollar value or the get rich aspect of it, that's the first thing that gets us involved.
Yeah.
But once we begin to see it as a financial revolution and taking power away from the central banks and the Fed, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, that's when it starts to change you from the inside out, don't you think?
No, yeah, that's fair. I mean, at this point, aside from that one purchase with mine, I've like shuffled around between Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB. Like I got a nice spread. I would consider it a risky spread at that, but like I'm staying in that realm. I'm not really coming out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I've jumped in. That's where I'm gonna stay. I might, again, like I said, eventually buy some land or something. But yeah, no, the whole cashing out thing doesn't be rich in US dollars doesn't float my boat anymore. I'm on
Right.
board.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just spending quality time living life and pursuing other goals, dreams, and passions while I'm making a little bit of money and
Yeah.
then watching the value go. But I was just gonna say, like, if you or I had bought Facebook or Amazon or Google 20 years ago and we held it a reasonable amount until today, I would argue that I would still be the same person. I would just be a rich version of this sack of flesh or whatever like that.
There.
But somehow Bitcoin, it becomes a cause, that it's not just a financial investment. I'm not, people that invest in Google or stocks or whatever, they have their weekly or their monthly allotment, but then they forget about it because it's on a set and forget kind of thing.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is actually revolutionary in the sense that it's changing the world as far as human rights, personal sovereignty in countries with dictators is over half the world. So to me, especially since we're kind of talking on the tail end of the Bitcoin conference,
Yeah.
you don't get 25,000 people together to celebrate. Woohoo! We're getting rich together.
Yeah. We're making a little bit of money, a little bit of coin, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but we're changing the world for the better as well.
Yeah. Agreed. I feel like a lot of people are on board with it beyond a financial gain now. And you're right. That is a tasty morsel that gets people looking at it real quick. Like, oh, I could make a little bit of money. I could ride Bitcoin up to 50,000, 60,000, sell and walk away with a little
Right.
bit of, change in my pocket. But then you get them on board, you're talking to them more and more, and they're like, well, I don't know. Let's dive a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. And then it's like, all right, you're a Bitcoin bro now. You're crypto bro.
You're a crypto bro or
Yeah,
Bitcoin
well,
bro. I've actually made the analogy, like between as a male, there are just certain, keeping it clean, I guess. There's certain features about a female that if we turn the corner and we see it, just makes our eyes pop out of our head, and attraction begins.
yeah.
But those aren't the things that keep you once you're in a relationship for a while.
That's
My analogy has been, well, with Bitcoin, yeah, I turned the corner and wow, those dollar signs popped out of my eyes. And yeah, I was immediately attracted to Bitcoin for that reason. But when you study, do the deep dive, and learn, Bitcoin becomes the bride of noble character that you want with you for the rest of your life, so to speak. To me, that's the analogy between a man and woman, sexual attraction, but then a lifelong commitment as well. Is it's not just the things, the dollars that attracted you to Bitcoin in the first place that keep most of us around. We're building a community and a world, hopefully, on a Bitcoin standard to where we want. I want everyone to have what I have in Bitcoin. I didn't have a 401 to speak of or any real significant savings, in my late 40s, but just the sense of, what, even if Social Security is not there for me, I feel okay with the amount of Bitcoin I own now, but I'm still building to my stack. But 10 years or more from now, no question. And I'm sort of evangelistic with Bitcoin in the sense, and orange pilling my friends and their wives in the sense of, number one, I want you to have this as well. I want you to understand. It's like Bitcoin is grain. The Old Testament story of Joseph and the Technicolor dream coat he wore. He
yeah.
had the dream, he had the vision, or the Pharaoh or somebody had the dream. Start building this. Spend the next several years building this stack of grain, and then when the famine and everything hits the fan, your people will be fine, and people will come from all over the world to buy from you. I want friends of mine to have that too. And then number two, I don't want to be the only rich Bitcoiner in my circle of family and
Well,
friends
of
when
course
shit
not.
hits the fan either. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, nope, I spent years trying to convince you.
Yeah.
don't act like I won the lottery and that I can just throw money at you, 5 or 10 years from now. I did not. I gave up a lot of things. I sacrificed hundreds of hours of study to get the conviction to keep on buying. And then, Bitcoiners, we tend to have a way of time preference to where it starts out, there's simple jokes or memes of, people are selling furniture or selling things in order to stack sats, to where the phrase becomes, if you went out to eat with your wife this month, you're shorting Bitcoin. If your socks don't have holes in them, you're shorting Bitcoin. If you're buying 2-ply toilet paper, you're shorting.
Listen, I'm keeping my 2-ply, man. I need a
Me
little,
too,
I need
honestly.
some creature comforts in this life, man. But no, you bring up a good point. And honestly, I mean, again, I'm not saying people should, but I'm saying there's nothing wrong with dollar cost averaging in, just throw a little bit in every now and again.
Yeah.
I mean, you should hopefully, in general, people watching this, you should be budgeting something. You should be saving something. Bitcoin, probably the best vehicle I can personally think of to save your money. So
I agree. But the grandparents' mindset of what I heard growing up, or the way even Dave Ramsey teaches it now, just simply saving your money for a rainy day is a losing proposition.
right now it
I
is, yeah.
was taught, I'm old enough to remember my grandparents, they went through the 30s, that depression era. And so saving, and
Well,
it makes sense.
back then the money was backed by something.
It was
So
it was in the 30s, or right
yeah,
around then, for until the 70s. Yeah,
yeah.
it actually was worth saving it. You were saving something that had real value. But nowadays, like we've said, if you save money, if you save dollars now, but not everybody with a full-time job or one and a half, and then one and a half kids and family to keep care of, or if you're a single mom, people don't have the time to become a part-time investor. You
Yeah.
don't have the money to pay someone to diversify your portfolio. You need this much in stock, you need this much here, and real estate, and then REITs, and then
There's a lot to it. Yeah.
yeah,
There's a lot
it's
to
just
it.
the level of education and study you have to put into, and then you just hope that the market doesn't tank and that there's not another depression, or it doesn't all fall out like we tend to think is coming.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like that's fair. I
Bitcoin
don't,
is an easy set it and forget it. Dollar cost average, like you said.
and it's getting easier and easier by the day too. And I feel like it'll eventually get to the point. I think there is already a chime for Bitcoin now. I don't know if you're familiar with chime. It just invests a little bit of like your
Yeah,
spare, like you
your spare
spend
change, it rounds
yeah.
up.
I think there is one for Bitcoin already, isn't there?
I think you're right, actually.
I have to figure
I
out
have
where
a
it is. I can't.
few. I'm connected to about 8.
Fair.
Sorry, I've KYC'd and given up my ID, but I'm just kind of concerned if you've ever noticed how, during the biggest ups and downs, some of the exchanges quit working.
They do.
So I made it a practice to have an account with a few of them connected to my bank account, to where, one, if something major happens and I do need liquidity, I do need to cash out a certain amount. I don't want to depend on the 1 or 2 exchanges crashing that are known to crash. And then 2, I could always send a small amount to 5 different places rather than risk the eyeballs of making one huge transaction.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely fair. There's a lot of some people have multiple cold storage wallets as it is. There's no problem having your things kind of mixed around with some different things. I think I utilize a couple different ones. I guess I shouldn't name here for security reasons. I shouldn't name what they
Yeah.
are. But yeah, I mean, like keeping a little bit on an exchange just for easy use, trading and so on, no big deal. But yeah, exchanges do go down. Exchanges do get hacked. Most of the big ones now they'll cover it, no big deal. But back in the day, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Some people lost everything. They've lost what would have became hundreds of millions of dollars. That's gotta hurt.
Yeah.
But things are better now. We're kind of like it's maturing. Security's getting tighter. You can trust Coinbase for the most part with it. I wouldn't say entirely, but for the most part.
Yeah, they have a kind of bad reputation for non-existent customer service. If you've got a problem, good luck getting through to them, and also for freezing accounts on little or no suspicion, or freezing accounts. Yeah.
I had a buddy who tried to he was trying to invest in something through Bitcoin. So he went and he bought the Bitcoin on Coinbase and tried to send it, and it was frozen for 4 or 5 days before he eventually gave up, got his money back, and went through Cash App, and they let him send his Bitcoin right away.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it's like, hey guys, let's not kind of forget at the end of the day, the whole thing is no middleman. When you step in and play a huge role as a middleman and stop people from doing what they want, people aren't going to like you. So,
yeah, to your point, Chime and other apps, it is getting it's ridiculously easy now. Something that I think has kept people away from Bitcoin crypto is just they're not techies. They don't imagine. I'm not either. You know, honestly, as far as technical stuff, if I can convince you to change a light bulb for me, that's my preferred path.
Right.
Honestly,
Yeah.
you know, I'll get someone to do. My ex's household nickname was tech support. You know, the modem's not working or whatever, but well, call tech support, honey. Can you, you know? So I've never labeled myself a techie either. It's
Yeah.
just to me, it was the wealth preservation of it that forced me to dig deep, right around the block size wars, and to decide, well, can I leave this on Coinbase or should I get a hardware wallet? To me, that was a big enough decision. I had to educate myself a lot,
It's a big
but
deal. You
it's
put it on a
it's so
wallet.
much easier now.
Oh yeah. Once you get it figured out and you're like, oh, I'm doing a transaction. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's not showing up. Oh, I don't know what's going on. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay, it's there. Okay, we're good.
that empty feeling of is it going? Is it going? So that's that's why we do tiny amounts first.
Yeah, test
Send
your
a dollar first,
transaction.
test it.
Yep. But all right, guy. I feel like we've been on this for about an hour now. We've covered a lot of topics, and I'd love to have you back on another time to dive into more. But for now, I think we should wrap it up. We've talked about the community, comparing it to U.S. currency. We talked about the convention, talked about the Trump note and the politics at play in the industry. Is there anything you feel like we missed?
Oh, like you said, let's just talk again because it's a rabbit hole, man.
That's
We
true.
could spend 5 or 10 minutes on dozens of different topics. Like I said, right now I'm focusing more on like a book I got. I'm at the conference. Jimmy Song, Robert Breedlove, that group. They've got their "Thank God for Bitcoin" is a book, and they had a separate one-day event there. So the thing that's on my mind lately is I have spent a lot of years making the Bitcoin good argument until I read the first few chapters of that book, just on the plane flying to Miami and on the way back, is one. I would recommend that book in the sense of orange pilling people,
Mhm.
in the sense of you we just don't realize how evil the corrupt fiat system that we grew up under,
Yeah.
that many people are still defending. You know, I want cold hard cash. I want something in my hand. You know,
Yeah.
we hear that a lot, opposed to this Bitcoin stuff. Well, yeah, that has an all-seeing eye and a pyramid and New World Order literally written on the back of it. But just
That's true.
the
Yeah.
creation of fiat currency, money from nothing, uh, and the way that has played out historically over centuries and millennia, just it's so riddled with evil that it will give you pause about even getting a car loan or a house loan or this, that,
Hmm.
the other stuff. So Bitcoin being the solution, I would just say that's the only thing that's on my mind lately. I've been refreshed lately
Perfect.
to
All
see
right.
what
Well,
a good choice Bitcoin is compared to the current system that we're escaping.
yeah, not even just Bitcoin good, but USD bad. USD bad. Fair enough. All right, guy. Well, listen, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you guys have any questions for Guy, don't be afraid to send them over to us, and I'm sure we'll happily dive into them further for you. But for now, Guy, any closing words before we go?
Nah, stack sats, remain humble.
Well said,
All
Guy. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, man. Good time.